despite all the setbacks, wars, and struggles it went through and is still going through until now. However, Russia is still standing on its feet and is even at the forefront of the world's great powers. As if it was a giant bear like the polar bear or the Eurasian brown bear, the country's national animal. Russia has an enormous area close to the size of a planet. Natural resources have no limits. Its people are proud of their homeland to the fullest extent, and see that it is an honor for any human being to hold Russian citizenship. At the level of area, there is no country in the whole world that can compete with Russia in terms of its land area. You can imagine that the Russian land area is approximately equal to the surface area of Pluto, with an estimated area of 17,125,000 square kilometers. And not only that, its area is not limited to one continent. Russia extends across the continent of Europe and the continent of Asia. That is why Russia is at the top of the list of countries known as transcontinental countries. Because of the vast area of its territory, Russia covers 11 different time zones. Other than that, its borders are among the longest borders in the world, and it shares it with 14 different countries from the continents of Europe and Asia, including countries such as Finland, Estonia, Norway, and Poland, in the continent of Europe, and countries such as China, North Korea, and Mongolia, in the continent of Asia. Russia has the 5th longest coastline in the world, with a length of 37,600 kilometers. In addition to owning thousands of islands, most of these islands are in the Arctic Ocean. Severny Island is the largest of the Russian islands in the region, with an area of more than 48,000 square kilometers. But the largest Russian island ever is located in the Pacific Ocean, on an area of more than 72,000 square kilometers, namely Sakhalin Island. In the Bering Strait separating Russia and the United States of America in the Pacific Ocean, there are 2 rocky islands known as the Islands of Yesterday and Tomorrow. The largest island of them belongs to Russia, and the smaller one belongs to the United States of America, although the distance between them does not exceed 4 kilometers only. However, the big island beats the small island by a whole day. The 2 islands are separated by what is known as the International Date Line, which is an imaginary line that passes on the surface of the globe, extending from the North Pole to the South Pole. In the event that this line is crossed, the date will be modified by a full day. I mean, if you are on the big island on the 21st of the month, and you go to the smaller one on the same day, it will be on the 20th of the month. This is the main reason for naming the 2 islands. There are some regional disputes between Russia and a number of countries over some regions in Europe and Asia. In Asia, we will find a conflict between it and Japan over the Kuril Islands, and with Kazakhstan on 3 islands in the Caspian Sea, regardless of the fact that Russia is currently imposing its control over them. And finally, one of the most important regional conflicts that has surfaced on the scene recently in Europe is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine over the Crimea Peninsula. This is the area that Russia completely occupied in 2014. Russia has 9 military bases outside its borders in countries such as Moldova, Kazakhstan, and Syria, and the country itself is divided into 85 administrative entities that fall into 6 different classifications. 46 governorates are directly controlled by the central government, and 2 in 20 republics, which are regions that are characterized by a form of self-government and have their own language, constitution, and legislature. Most of its residents are from ethnic minorities. There are 9 provinces, similar to the provinces, but they are remote areas and their population is limited, and 4 regions called the Okrug. These regions are distinguished by a degree of independence, but at the same time they follow a number of governorates, with the exception of 1 region, but among them they do not belong to any governorate. And the last 3 entities in Russia are the federal cities, the largest of which is Moscow, the capital of the country, the Order of Petersburg, and the city of Sevastopol. The last classification of administrative entities includes a separate one called the Jewish Autonomous Region. It is an entity that was established with the aim of hosting Russian Jews in the country so that it would serve as a homeland for them. And this is despite the fact that the total number of Jews in Russia does not exceed 1% of the country's demographics. And this takes us to the residents and some of the strangest facts about its people. Russia is the largest country in Europe with a population of 143 million people. This number puts it in 9th place on the list of the largest countries in the world by population. While the largest area of Russian territory is located in the continent of Asia, the vast majority of the population lives in the part located in the continent of Europe, at a rate of up to 77%. Almost 10% of the total population live in its largest city, and the largest city on the entire continent of Europe, the capital of the country, Moscow. 80% of the country's population are indigenous Russians, and 20% of the remaining are ethnic minorities, numbering about 180 groups. And the Russian people in general are distinguished by generosity and hospitality, but we find them not used to smiling at strangers. I mean, if you see someone there that you don't know and smile at him out of politeness, then there is something strange for them. The official language in the country is Russian, but as we agreed, the republics are allowed special languages besides Russian. As for the official currency in the country, it is the Russian ruble, and $1 equals 81 Russian rubles. Compared to the rest of Europe, Russia has one of the highest birth rates on the continent. But at the same time, the death rate is relatively high, especially among men. There is a disparity between the numbers of women and men in the country, and researchers say that the reason for this disparity is due to the Second World War and its great impact after it claimed the lives of more than 25 million Russian soldiers. But on the other hand, in our modern era, studies suggest that the main causes of the high death rate among men are drinking alcohol and cigarettes other than drugs. A Russian citizen annually consumes 20 liters of liquor, and death rates in Russia due to cardiovascular diseases and strokes reach 65% of the total deaths. This is what made the researchers link it to excessive drinking. The latest studies on the life expectancy of Russian citizens suggest that a Russian citizen is expected to live up to 64 years. Add to this that Russia has a frightening rate of people with acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which is called AIDS. The number of people living with AIDS in the country has recently reached more than 1,002,000 infected people. Surprisingly, the number is not under control at all, but is rising exponentially annually. Studies show that the reasons behind the spread of AIDS among Russians are due to the widespread use of drugs by injection, and that there are approximately 1,800,000 people in the country who use drugs in this way, and this talk, of course, other than sexual contact between the infected and the uninfected. On the other hand, the Russian people excel in a number of international sports in a remarkable way, including, for example, ice hockey, chess, wrestling, and gymnastics, in addition to the fact that they have a respectable national football team. Russia was able to win the first place as the most gold medalist in the 1994 and 2014 Winter Olympics. But at the end of the 2014 tournament, which was hosted by Russia itself, they were stripped of 4 medals due to the discovery of the participants' doping. Because of this story, they were prevented from participating in the Tokyo Olympics, in addition to depriving their football team from participating in the World Cup that was held in Qatar. The enormous size of the Russian lands makes it endowed with a variety of forms of physical geography. In the west of the country, on the continent of Europe, the European plain covers most parts of European Russia. In the southwest, we will find the Caucasus Mountains, which includes the highest mountain peak in Europe, the summit of Mount Elbrus. And near the Caucasus Mountains, we will find the Volga Delta, the largest river delta in all of Europe. In the north of the Russian Komi Republic lies the largest untouched forests in Europe. Komi Forest and the Caucasus Mountains and the Ural Mountains form the borders of European Russia. On the other hand, in the east of the country, in the Asian part, we will find the Siberian region, which alone represents 77% of the total huge area of Russia. Despite its huge size, the number of people living in Siberia does not exceed 23% of the total population of all of Russia. Siberia is famous for its harsh climate, which in January reaches -25 degrees Celsius. In addition to its history of hosting labor camps and prisons of the Soviet and Russian government, not to mention being the perfect place to exile Russian dissidents. And in southern Siberia, the largest Russian lakes and the deepest lakes in the world are located at all, Lake Baikal, and who reaches a depth of 1,642 meters. In the far east of the country is the Kamchatka Peninsula, in addition to the Kuril Islands. They are the most volcanic sites in all of Russia, with about 60 active volcanoes. The diversity of Russia's geographical nature contributes mainly to its economic activity. Some sources say that Russian lands contain more than 30% of all the natural resources on Earth's surface. Russia depends mainly on energy revenues to drive its economic growth. It has the highest gas reserves in the whole world and is the #1 exporter of gas in the world. This is, however, the third largest oil-producing country after both the United States of America and Saudi Arabia. The oil and gas sector alone represents the equivalent of 16% of the country's gross domestic product. In contrast to the energy sector and natural resources, Russia is one of the centers of determined powers with regard to the arms industry. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, Russia ranks second in the world in arms sales. Although Russia owns about 1 billion acres of arable land, the percentage of land that is cultivated continuously does not exceed 1,000 of them. However, the harvest season there is very short, ranging from 2 to 4 months only. This is because most of the lands there are partially or completely covered with permafrost, which is not ideal for agriculture. This is what made most of the agricultural operations in Russia confined to the southern part of the country, where the climate is more suitable for agriculture. The strange thing is that even with the decline in agricultural activity in the country, Russia ranks first in the world in producing a number of crops, including oats, barley, buckwheat, sugar beets, and other crops. Aside from the physical geography, we will find that Russia includes some of the most amazing man-made monuments in the entire world, such as the Kremlin complex in the Russian capital, which includes a museum and 5 palaces, including the Grand Kremlin Palace, which was the residence of the Tsar in Russia, and is currently the residence of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In the capital, you can also see the Red Square, which is considered one of the most famous squares in Russia. The Ukraine Hotel is one of the most important hotels in the Russian capital, and one of the most luxurious hotels in the world. And in the city of St. Petersburg, one of the oldest and largest museums in the world is located, which is the Hermitage Museum, which includes more than 3 million masterpieces. In the same city is the former official residence of Russia's Tsar, and one of the most majestic palaces in the world. It is the Winter Palace.